How many games have you played where you've been sold on the idea of choice or player freedom? In Fallout 4, for example, we are told we can customize all our weapons and gear, build our own settlements, and essentially become the kind of character we want to be, whereas in No Man's Sky, the idea of exploring a million, billion, quadrillion planets or whatever seemed like an overwhelming adventure. Yet, in reality, that sense of choice and freedom is a construct in which the supposed infinite possibilities are limited purely by the rules and restrictions set by the developer.
Nobody would want that.
It's a means of stabilizing the gameplay and keeping the player focused on following or creating a series of objectives to generate a state of flow. As gamers, we all know that if a game immerses us in its world, it becomes a more subconscious experience where every quest, objective, or task we do is never scrutinized or challenged. We just do exactly what the game tells us to do. Even if it boasts the aspect of player choice like in Deus Ex or Hitman, we're still always following the game's indisputable objectives. But believe it or not, Bioshock explored the idea that games predetermine the player's path long before the Stanley Parable. It existentially questioned our role as gamers by calling attention to the purpose of our adventure. Bioshock's twist, in which it's revealed that the protagonist Jack is actually being controlled by the supposedly trustworthy Atlas through the phrase, "Would you kindly," ignited the philosophical epiphany that the player is always the puppet on strings.
Was a man sent to kill, or a slave? A man chooses. A slave obeys.
Despite being a rich linear experience, at its core, the illusion of choice defines the gameplay, not just as an upgrade mechanic, but as an emotive tool to propel our journey forward. Throughout the game, we are continually exposed to quotes and speeches from Andrew Ryan highlighting how we have the freedom to choose what individuals we want to be, yet this emphasis alludes to Rapture being almost a metaphor of the gaming world as a whole, one in which power is the ultimate goal of the player. In Bioshock, that single-minded objective of power is echoed by the objectivism that drives the city of Rapture, the philosophy that happiness is our only real moral goal in life. As a result, it's a world drenched in selfishness and greed, making the notion of individual choice seem more chaotic rather than ideal. If man was given absolute power, then it would make an uncontrollable monster out of him, in the same way that removing rules and restrictions from the player would make the game unstable, unfocused, and inevitably corrupt, much like the City of Rapture. Video games are built around a series of systems and obstacles in which the player has to make the right choice in order to proceed. Even if a multiple choice game like Mass Effect, Heavy Rain, or Until Dawn comes along, it's ultimately structured to bring the central experience back to a controlled state by the developer. In a way, Bioshock defines a self-contradiction within gaming. It constantly infers to the notion of free will and individual choice, but it's basically an allusion to the reality in which our commands are actually non-existent. Our false sense of control is always dictated by the master.
Now would you kindly head to Ryan's office and kill the son of a bitch? It's time to finish this.
In Bioshock, the only right choice we can truly oppose is the moral dilemma of whether to harvest or save the Little Sisters, echoing Ryan's point that we all make choices, but in the end, our choices make us. The game presents us with a question as to the kind of player or individual we choose to be, one that gauges with our sensibilities through a powerful fantasy, or one that unsympathetically rejects the emotional state entirely. Games are always more about the journey than the destination, and these regulations and feelings of power give us a purpose to keep pursuing that end goal, even if the outcome doesn't always match the challenges that came before it. Our adventure is a fixed destiny that we cannot absolutely control, and like in life, we all essentially end up at the same conclusion. But at the heart of it all, what truly matters is how we choose to walk down the same narrow path, in our own individual and self-fulfilling ways.